station staff, management, and advertisers.
Liberalism is back in style. Welcome to the evolution.
What if you knew Fox News was just lying to you? How could you watch when you know?
He was voted Variety Entertainer of the Year in the Excellence in the Arts Award. And is one of the highest Arbitrum, now Nielsen-rated talk radio hosts in Las Vegas. He is also a refreshing voice of logic and reason. Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Doug Basham.
And good morning, my fellow wokes and Republican jokes. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Doug Basham, and welcome to the Doug Basham Show right here on KSHP in Las Vegas and on social media, and to a genuine demonstration of excellence in broadcasting. Hey, everybody. Great to see you all again. Oh, I'm getting that echo. I am Doug Basham, card-carrying member in good standing, I might add, of the Enemy Within Brigade, also known as one radical leftist lunatic who needs to be handled by the American military, and now just might be. And to reiterate my sentiment from last week, Wednesday through Friday, as much as it pains me to admit it, Donald Trump was right. He spent the last 4 years telling America how shitty it was, and then last Tuesday, his supporters proved him right. So welcome to day 6 of Mourning in America, mourning spelled with a U, of course, as true patriots who truly love this country grieve the loss of the great American experiment in self-governance and democracy and anxiously await the stroke that will save mankind. Today is Veterans Day. We offer nothing but love, respect, thanks, and apologies, as I am certain that what happened last Tuesday is the exact opposite of what they fought so bravely for. My website is DougBasham.com, last name spelled B as in Bob, A-S-H-A-M as in Mary. DougBasham.com, my email, Doug@DougBasham.com. That said, I offer a warm yet disheartened welcome to those of you listening on KSHP, AM 1400 and 107.1 FM, on your radio dial here in Las Vegas. We are also broadcasting on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, and of course, Twitter/X. Actually, we're not on TikTok today. I was kicked off last Monday. They told me I would be allowed back on today. However, not until 11:52 a.m., when there's only like 5 minutes left in the show. Apparently, that was the time they kicked me off last week. So apparently, we will be back on Twitter, I should say TikTok, tomorrow for the whole hour. Now, if you go to my website, again, DougBasham.com, you will discover it's all of one page. That's it. At the top, you'll find the show's logo. Underneath, 10 links, most to my social media sites. Also one to contact me via email. Now, the 2 links I'd like to call your attention to the most are, 1, my YouTube page, and 2, my TikTok page. On my YouTube page, I would respectfully ask you hit the subscribe button. On TikTok, please hit the red follow button. And if you would like to watch the show live and not just listen to it, reason being when I play clips, I don't play audio clips, I play video clips. When you go to my website, go to either my YouTube, Facebook, or X pages. And if I violate YouTube policies and they suspend my stream mid-show, just go back to my website, then to my Facebook or X page. Got it? 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you would like to talk on the radio somewhere in our second half hour together, that's 702 area code 221-SAVE, as in Save Our Democracy, something we failed to do on Tuesday. And now on to our broken news for the day. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz spoke for the first time since the election he spoke on Friday, I think it was. I think he expressed perfectly what so many of us have felt since last Tuesday's disaster at the ballot box.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I don't know about you, but I've had a week.
Yes, it was a week indeed. And not only a disastrous one, but a perilous one. Sure, for we patriotic, Constitution-loving liberal Democrats, but even more dangerous for our country and for the entire world. It was nice to see, however, that Governor Walz hasn't lost his sense of humor.
You know, I've gotten to see an awful lot of America over the last 3 months, more than I ever thought I was going to see. I've made many new friends. I've learned a lot of new things. I ate way too much local food, but I can order donuts, people. I can order donuts.
I can order donuts, people. I can order donuts. And then it was time for the coach to get serious.
But look, folks, I just want to acknowledge the moment. It's hard. It's hard to lose. It's hard to understand while so many of our fellow citizens, people that we have fought so long and hard for, wound up choosing the other path. It's hard to reckon with what that path looks like over the next 4 years. So if you're feeling deflated, discouraged today, I get it. Take some time, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, take care of your community. There's a million ways to make a positive difference, and get back in this fight when you're ready. And know that whenever you're ready to get back in that fight, I'll be standing right here ready to fight the fight with you.
Honest words from an honest, patriotic man who served his country honorably in what just had to be a difficult speech to deliver. I mean, you travel all over the country nonstop for a little over 3 months, and you end up watching someone who is manifestly inferior to you and your running mate in every criteria by which you can measure, take home the big prize. And worse, someone who doesn't even want the job and is willing to let a crackpot billionaire run the country, and emulating his BFF in Russia, whom he admires so much and lusts to be like, a billionaire who has become dictator Trump's first oligarch.
I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark, gothic MAGA. Massive, crushing victory. Get everyone, friends, family, people on the street. Put the signs up, put the hat on. Let's go. America's just not just going to be great. America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing.
Amazing! You know, for someone who's considered a business genius and titan, there are times when it appears Elon is quite a few peas short of a casserole. I mean, the gates are down, the lights are flashing, but sometimes the train just doesn't arrive. It also seems to me that Elon is enjoying his newfound public celebrity just a little bit too much.
The future is going to be amazing.
Amazing! Is that even a word? And you know, he's right. The next 4 years are going to be amazing for Elon Musk. And it's already started. The day after the election, Musk's worth increased by $20 billion in one day. But more on that at a later date. But I suspect if Musk's love affair with the limelight continues, I can see that only creating problems and division with his new boss, who's an even bigger attention-seeking media whore. We've also learned that the aforementioned Musk actually listened into a phone call between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. What? The pillow guy Mike Lindell wasn't available? Vladimir, the 2020 election was stolen. I have all the evidence you need. I just need someone to see it. Will you ever look, Vlad? And how are you sleeping? President Zelensky, meet President Musk. And as I'll say, we'll do more on Musk as the week progresses. But yeah, these are the perks awarded to the oligarchs who A, spend a crap ton of money to get you elected, including purchasing the social media platform of note and turning it into a cesspool of right-wing lies and conspiracy theories, which, don't you think, could be classified as an in-kind campaign contribution? And B, in return, will do your bidding with other billionaires and even world leaders with whom they hold sway and influence, whose advice you might need along the way implementing your fascist agenda. But if you folks think big money has poisoned our politics for too long, what you saw in this election is the most egregious example we have ever witnessed. And it's gonna get worse. A whole lot worse. Elon Musk just bought himself an office inside the White House. Amazing! Right now, I'd like to feature a new segment that may or may not become a regular feature. On Friday, I played you a couple clips from white supremacist, neo-Nazi, and self-professed incel Nick Fuentes, who was mocking women because Trump won. And as he put it, men now control women's bodies. And if you thought that was bad, and it truly was, just wait till you see this jackhole. And these clips and the shameless slags in them have led me to think the only appropriate name for this segment would have to be WTF, What Have We Become in the Era and Error of the Vile Orange Scum. And yes, I intended that to rhyme. And the two clips I played on Friday and the one I'm about to play, they all speak to something I have been saying for years. Many of the people who support Donald Trump do so because they're just as bad as he is. The despicable dregs, inbreds, and incels of society have finally found their champion, who's just as bad as they are. And while some of his supporters regurgitate the old phrase, well, he wasn't found guilty of rape, just sexual abuse. You know, like that's better? I mean, and not disqualifying, whereas rape certainly would be. Others know he's a rapist and just don't care. If you need more proof, voila.
I'm just a girl standing in front of the world asking for a president who isn't a rapist. Request denied!
I mean, you hear something like this and you quickly realize it would be impossible to underestimate this guy. His parents must be so proud. And he was probably born on a highway. That's where most accidents happen. And you know, mistakes can be corrected. This guy is the exception to the rule. I don't know if depravity this profound can be fixed. His parents should have just drowned him when he was a pup. I mean, it's parents' jobs to raise their children, right? It's obvious this guy's parents quit after the first day. Either that or they failed just as badly as his dad's condom, which would explain why his birth certificate is a letter of apology from the condom factory. And you know, anyone can be an a-hole from time to time, but this guy is abusing the privilege. And you know what you call that useless piece of skin on his penis? Him. This is the kind of guy, if his wife came out of the bathroom, winked at him and said, "Honey, I just shaved down there, you know what that means?" He'd say, "Yeah, it means the drain is clogged again." Most guys would tickle their significant other with a feather. This guy would use the whole bird. And if his wife, if this guy ever asked his wife, "How come you never tell me when you orgasm?" she would reply, "I don't like calling you when you're at work." This guy's only purpose in life will be as an organ donor. And don't get me wrong, he probably has a great sex life. The only thing missing is another person. And you know what, Alex? If this guy, his wife, and his teenage daughter walked into a restaurant, you know what the waitress would ask? She'd ask, "Table for two?" For you Trumpers, his wife and his teenage daughter are the same person. Get it? And with this guy, just like Trump, there is no bottom. Trump, leading by example, has given his supporters permission to not only be the worst possible versions of themselves, but to be proud of it, and even record themselves doing so and broadcast their depravity on social media. Again, just like Trump does. This guy's not only willing to admit that his president is a rapist, he's proud of it. And so, this is the first installment of a segment I'm going to call WTF Have We Become in the Era and Error of the Vile Orange Scum. And does anyone listening today disagree with me that it's only going to get worse the next 4 years? And does anyone share my fear that it may have already gone too far and that we just might not recover from this? Millions upon millions of people now thoroughly enjoy being the exact opposite of what a decent, civilized nation needs to have in order to survive. Some sense of a shared civility. I mean, maybe not kumbaya, but at least not championing and applauding rapists. There has to be a middle ground somewhere in between those two. But I fear that Trumpism is here to say it is much easier for many to be vile than to be decent, apparently. And speaking of the Orange Fraud Father, as we knew to expect, the new version of our Trump National Nightmare 2.0 has already started, and he's already flexing his dictatorial muscles. First, California Governor Gavin Newsom announced that he was calling a special legislative session in what he called an attempt to Trump-proof his state. Let me read from a story in The Hill. Quote, California Governor Gavin Newsom issued a proclamation Thursday to convene a special session of the state legislature with the goal of preserving civil rights and enabling potential litigation ahead of the incoming Trump administration. The special session, scheduled to begin on December the 2nd, will focus on strengthening California legal resources to safeguard fundamental rights, reproductive freedoms, climate action, and immigrant families, according to the proclamation. Newsom said, quote, "The freedoms we hold dear in California are under attack, and we won't sit idle. California has faced this challenge before, and we know how to respond. We will do everything necessary to ensure Californians have the support and resources they need to thrive." End quote. The proclamation will be the first of several initiatives taken by Newsom in partnership with the legislature to start shoring up California's defenses against an incoming federal administration that has threatened the state on multiple fronts, according to the governor's office, end quote. And yes, Trump has indeed threatened both Newsom, who he so presidentially calls new scum, and the state of California on more than one occasion.
How about this? Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of California.
Newsom.
He signed Newsom, I call him.
But do you think...
No, he corrected me. He corrected me. I said, that's the first time I've been corrected.
There are CEOs out here, if they said those sort of things about a rival CEO, they'd be sacked. Do you think it's fine for a president?
But they don't have to survive like me. They don't have to go through what I have to go through. There's never been a president that's been treated like me, so I have to fight my own way.
Well, you made a...
We're going to take care of our farmers. We're going to take care of your water situation. And we'll force it down his throat. And we'll say, Gavin, if you don't do it, we're not giving you any of that fire money that we send you all the time for all the forest fires that you have. But with this group, everything is dead. The automobile industry is dead. The water coming here is dead. And Gavin Newsom is going to sign those papers. And if he doesn't sign those papers, we won't give him money to put out all his fires. And if we don't give him the money to put out his fires, he's got problems. He's a lousy governor.
And then there was the time Trump said this in an interview with that mother Tucker Carlson. And this clip demonstrates clearly how superficial and shallow this unqualified orange mess is for office, as well as what a danger he is. Listen to what he says.
I used to get along great with him, when I was president. I got along really good, Gavin.
Well, you got along with Gavin Newsom?
I did. I really did. He was always very nice to me. He said the greatest things. He would say things like he's doing a great job. Oh, he was very nice.
About you?
About me. That's why I could never hit him, because he was so nice to me.
I used to get along with Gavin Newsom because he was nice to me, and he said nice things about me. You see? That's all it takes for Trump to embrace you. Say nice things about him. Flatter his massive and insatiable yet fragile ego. But here's what's worse. He also said, that's why I could never hit him. He was so nice to me. And every despot and dictator in the world knows that only too damn well. Flatter him, and he not only won't hit you, he will be putty in your hands. Thanks for Ukraine, Don. Poland is next. And what do you care? Look at all the Polish jokes you Americans make, like, why do Polish people always have ski at the end of their names, as in Jablonski? Because they can't spell toboggan. And did you hear about the guy who was half Italian and half Polish? He made himself an offer he couldn't understand. And you know how to sink a Polish battleship? Put it in water. And you know why the new Polish Navy has glass-bottomed boats? So they can see the old Polish Navy. And hey, what's the difference between a Polish wedding and a Polish funeral? One last drunk. And that reminds me, quick story. I was on a flight from Vegas to Phoenix once, and I was seated beside this incredibly attractive young lady, and I noticed she was reading a book on sexual statistics. So I casually asked her if that was a good book. And she replied, oh yes, it's very interesting. It identifies that American Indians have the longest average penis and that Polish men have the biggest average diameter. She then said, by the way, my name is Jill, what's yours? To which I replied, pleased to meet you, Jill. I'm Tonto Kowalski. But back on point, Gavin Newsom also put out a video very articulately furthering his remarks.
We have a president-elect, and I'm one of those people, I revere the institution. I revere this country, I revere the presidency, and I want our president to succeed. And our job, my job, is not to wake up every single day and get a crowbar and try to put it in the spokes of the wheel of the Trump administration. And so again, in that spirit of an open hand, not a closed fist, that's how we want to proceed. That said, fourth point, I'm not naive either, and we're pragmatic, and we will stand firm. I am reminded there's a great old poem about, the winds may howl, but I will not be swept away. This notion that we have to plant our feet. And I remember, I've been here long enough, having worked with the previous Trump administration, I'm not naive about those winds, and they did howl. We were involved in over 100, well, in fact, we were involved in specifically 122 lawsuits with the Trump administration. We know their playbook. We know what they're going to do. I talked a lot about the campaign, and I appreciated Kamala Harris's closing message about Donald Trump has an enemies list, and she said, have a to-do list. I said I would make it a modest addendum to that. So did Donald Trump. That to-do list is laid out in a 922-page document, of which there's 270 specific points that he has publicly supported in that Project 2025 document, which 75% of its authors, and there's a multitude of authors, worked with the Trump administration. None of us are naive when he said he knew nothing about it. That is a to-do list. That is a playbook. The Heritage Foundation and others backing that playbook. You build on that, not naive about what to anticipate.
And of course, Trump had to respond in the only way he knows how, with a vitriolic, childish, and unhinged word salad that only further proves why he should not be allowed to take the reins of this country come January. This is what he posted on social media, quote, Governor Gavin Newsom is trying to kill our nation's beautiful California. For the first time ever, more people are leaving than are coming in. He is using the term Trump-proof as a way of stopping all of the great things that can be done to make California great again. But I just overwhelmingly won the election. People are being forced to leave due to his and others' insane policy decisions, like the ridiculously rerouting of millions of gallons of water a day from the north out into the Pacific Ocean, rather than using it free of charge for the towns, cities, and farms dotted all throughout California. Dotted. They are making it impossible to build a reasonably priced car. The unchecked and unbalanced homeless catastrophe, the cost of everything, in particular groceries, is out of control. Also, as an agent for the United States of America on voting and elections, I will be demanding that voter ID and proof of citizenship are a necessary part and component of the voting process, end quote. So let me see if I have this right. States' rights for abortion, but everything else falls under the purview of Orange Caesar. Do I have that right? So much for the states' right lie he used to defend his dismantling of the protections provided by Roe versus Wade. His will be done in California and every other state. But I mean, he just can't not respond to anything that challenges his authoritarian inclinations and his lust for unitary ultimate power over everyone and everything. And this is what we are looking at for another 4 years. Someone says something and it responds with the same fourth grade childish insults on a daily friggin' basis, like Gavin Newsom. And the irony that I'm sure isn't lost on any real-world dwelling patriot is that between Newsom and Trump, only one is true scum. And it ain't Gavin Newsom. And of course, all the dolts in his brain-dead MAGA cult base will applaud and cheer their dear leader's juvenile behavior. And then some reporter will write a piece mansplaining what we true patriots just don't get about Trump supporters. Have you tried talking to them? Yes, we have. They're a bunch of ill-informed, completely gullible, conspiracy-theorizing imbeciles. 4 more years. And by the way, the aforementioned dolts include people like Marjorie Trader Trash 8 Toes Green, This is what she posted on social media, on X. Quote, "Holy shit! Donald Trump just dropped the mic on Gavin Newsom and how he ruined California." End quote. But then again, what would we expect from someone who had this exchange with a British reporter a few months back?
Marjorie, thank you so much, the news agents and from London. What do you think the message should be to Nikki Haley tonight?
Well, we've been encouraging her to drop out and support President Trump, and I think tonight is the clear message that President Trump is the clear front runner. He's the winner in our Republican primary, and it's time for Nikki Haley to drop out and support him.
Do you think President Trump, Mr. Trump, is closer to picking his VP, and should you be on that list?
Oh, that's the question everyone asks, and no, I don't think Nikki Haley should be on the list, but of course President Trump will choose who he wants for VP.
Would you like to be on that list?
He's got a long list. I support President Trump in any way he'd ask me, but I can assure you it won't be Nikki Haley.
And can you tell me why so many people that support Donald Trump love conspiracy theories, including yourself? He seems to attract lots of conspiracy theorists.
Well, let me tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist, and the left and the media spreads more conspiracy theories. We like the truth. We like supporting our Constitution, our freedoms, and America first. So,
what about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space lasers.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you f*** off? How about that?
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nice to see this bleach blonde, bad-built, butch-body shrew is a fan of Pee Wee Herman. I'm not the conspiracy theorist. You are. And no, I won't talk about Jewish space lasers. You talk about them. And while you're at it, why don't you just F off, too? Seriously, this gal's elevator just doesn't go all the way to the top floor. And yet, last Tuesday, Marjorie Trader Trash 8 Toes Green won re-election in Georgia by 28 points. 28 points. We are so boned as a nation. And that should become a regular feature on the show. Today in We Are So Boned as a Country. Moving on, I got to tell you something over which I'm kind of pissed off. As I've mentioned before, I record at least 4 hours of news each day, sometimes 6. And I look for clips that I find compelling and that benefit me and that I've learned from and hope you do as well. But the past few days, news has been hard to come by. As predicted, the pontificating over why Kamala Harris and Democrats lost Tuesday's election has continued unabated and ad nauseum. And I'm almost at the point now where I'm like, who cares? We lost. Give me some news I can sink my teeth into and return to presenting the kind of show I like to present. But no, Kamala Harris lost because, and I heard just a shipload of excuses. She's a woman. She's black. Or she turned black, depending on which side of the political aisle you're on. She didn't differentiate between herself and Joe Biden on The View, to which I'd say the people who voted against her don't watch The View. She was anchored to Biden's dismal approval ratings. She was seen as an incumbent, even though incumbency is usually a plus, except, of course, for Donald Trump in 2020. Democrats went too far to the right. They went too far to the left. She cited Goldman Sachs' support for her economic plan in the debate. Democrats changed candidates midstream. Biden didn't withdraw soon enough. Democrats hid Biden's decline until the debate made it impossible to hide it any longer. There should have been a primary. She should have picked Josh Shapiro as her running mate. Some say she focused too much on Donald Trump. Some say she didn't focus enough on him. Democrats have abandoned the working class. They lost because of their support for what some call Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people. She didn't do Joe Rogan's show. Kamala and Democrats failed with new media. Democrats didn't expand the Supreme Court. They didn't deliver an increase on the minimum wage, Russian interference, and on and on and on. And one person posted this on X. I thought this was just a hoot. Quote, "Why Kamala lost? What did Democrats do wrong? It's Joe's fault. It's Kamala's fault. Blah, 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 blah. How about we lost the most qualified candidate to ever run for president because 52% of this country is hot effing garbage and white people suck. We don't deserve her." End quote. Damn, girls got game and spunk. In short, failure is in the eyes of the beholder. And while there may be some truth in some, if not most, if not all of those excuses, I don't believe any of them nail the main reason she lost. I told you on Friday I would have for you today one of, if not the most satisfying post-election analyses I've heard to date. Also on Friday, I mentioned a phone call I had with a chap named Brandon the day before, after which I started thinking out loud, and I proffered that many of those who voted for the Orange Trader may not have been completely aware of everything they just signed on to. They may have thought that Trump would improve on an economy that the economists said is now the envy of the world, because the right-wing propaganda, fascist hate media has told them for 4 straight years that the economy is just awful. I then played a clip from MSNBC host and economic analyst Stephanie Ruhle. She alluded to something in her response that the clip I've been referencing elaborated on and made crystal clear. Let's start with what Stephanie said first.
It is also true, though, that the perception of the economy under Biden is what provided the greatest weight to his approval rating. It's probably the largest factor that drove it to its low numbers. Why is that so different from the actual reality of the economy?
Because the fact of the matter is that we came out of the darkest hole, which was COVID, and we then experienced the biggest inflation spike that most of us have in our entire lives. So I can sit here all day with accurate data that talks about jobs and wages. And remind you, even when wages go up, we credit ourselves. When I get a raise, I say, well, it's because I am so good at my job. But when life costs more, I blame the government. Right. And so I can give you all the data that says we had the best economic recovery in the world, which we did. And when President Biden tried to tout that with Bidenomics, everybody flipped out on him, saying, how could you do that? Don't you know we're suffering? Which they are. Because as you said, rent, mortgages, food, try to go on vacation, all of it costs so much more. So you've got scores of people across this country who are not jumping on board to be on Team MAGA and who don't hate Kamala Harris, but they're just saying, my life costs too much money. And I've never experienced this kind of inflation in my life. Who was the person who was in office? And it was Joseph R. Biden. And that's not unique to the United States. We just saw that in practically every election in developed countries where the country just said, why does life cost this much? And they're not connecting the dots of, well, we're coming out of the COVID hole. This is where we are. And that's where we find ourselves today.
Now, Steph just said what we saw wasn't an armada of people flocking to the MAGAverse, but rather people short-sightedly, but understandably so to a degree, saying things cost too much, I'm voting for the other guy. And like Steph said, they weren't connecting the dots as to why things are more expensive now. And that echoes my claim that overall, and not just with the economy, but those who voted for Trump were and are not fully aware of everything they signed up for. Like Trump, they were living and thinking in the moment and weren't playing the long game. But there was one thing Steph said that I didn't comment on at the time, as I was going to replay it prior to the main clip I wanted to play for you. Let's hear it again.
But they're just saying, my life costs too much money. And I've never experienced this kind of inflation in my life. Who was the person who was in office? And it was Joseph R. Biden. And that's not unique to the United States. We just saw that in practically every election in developed countries where the country just said, why does life cost this much?
This election's results weren't something germane to just the United States. It just didn't happen here. It happened globally. MSNBC's Chris Hayes, as he often does, gave one of the best breakdowns on this anomaly as I've heard. And yes, it did make me feel quite a bit better.
I think if you watch the show, and maybe you're just turning in for the first time now, I personally am as big a fan of Bidenomics basically as anyone in public life. I continue to believe it was an enormous success substantively. It was the best economic stewardship of a president in my lifetime. It failed politically. We just got the verdict on it. It was too many voters, more of the same. And it was swallowed by inflation. And that's not a trend that is unique to the U.S. Coming out of COVID, the entire world experienced a surge in inflation worse than any global bout of inflation in 30 years, if not more. Like, no one really who is under 30 had ever experienced anything like this. And let me tell you something. Voters absolutely hated it everywhere, from the UK to India to Poland to Argentina and Botswana, from North Macedonia to South Korea and South Africa. Voters have punished incumbent politicians and parties in the wake of COVID and the inflation. Look at this chart, okay? It's put together by U.S. economist Gennady Rudkovich. These are the results for incumbent parties, which, by the way, span the spectrum, okay, in all the major Western national elections held this year. They all got toasted, lost ground, most by double digits. Every governing party facing election in a developed country this year lost vote share, according to the Financial Times. In fact, according to their data, it's the first time this has ever happened going back to at least 1905, essentially the birth of the franchise and industrial democracy. Now, the Biden-Harris ticket, Harris-Walz ticket, Biden administration, the Democratic Party, was actually the most successful of these incumbent parties. They only lost 7% of their support, and indeed, I think that has to do with the fact that the economic response was better. There's no denying people everywhere around the world basically came out of the turbulence and trauma of COVID, and then the supply shocks and the inflation, and they were like, this sucks. I don't like this. So why am I saying this? Well, take that to heart. And I'm not just saying this to like spin things. I truly believe this is the story of the election. And the reason I say this is because all the theories about what to do now and how to resist the worst MAGA plans and win people back to decency and democratic pluralism depend upon understanding and grasping the situation clearly. Right now, the biggest task we have is persuading our fellow Americans and shifting public opinion. And doing it every time MAGA Republicans overreach and pick fights that are going to be disastrous for them, and they will overreach.
And Chris is exactly right. They will overreach, just like they always do without fail. Trump and his Republicans will run this economy hotter than Hades for 4 years. They'll relax regulation, jack it up on steroids, and when the false economic recklessness and drugs wear off, their economy will crash, as it always does. And then, as is always the case, it'll be up to Democrats to come in and reverse the economy, which is what Joe Biden did, which is what Barack Obama did. It's what the next Democratic president will have to do. Wait, what am I saying? That's what the next Democratic president will have to do. That is, if there's enough left of our tattered Constitution that will even allow a Democratic challenger to run. And if he does, if he'll be nothing more than a token challenger like they have in all the countries, the leaders of which Trump not only admires, but wants to be himself. And if that's the case, I would advise any Democratic challenger to avoid standing close to any windows that aren't on the first floor. But that was the best post-election report I've heard. I hope you found it as illuminating and, frankly, comforting as I did. And kudos to Chris and his staff for the research they did and even coming up with the idea of doing that research. I had never considered looking at other nations and what they were doing with regards to their elections. And I apologize to radio listeners who couldn't see the chart that Chris used in his dissertation. So what I'm going to do is put that chart back up now so you still can't see it. But I'll tell you what it says. It shows that every civilized nation that held an election this year, the incumbent party wasn't just defeated, they were slaughtered. Croatia lost by 8%. Lithuania lost by 30%. France and Belgium each lost by 36 points. The UK, 46%. We did better than all of them. Our shift was just 7%. Which brings us back to my agenda, the one I've been hammering on for literally years now, and the horse I will continue to beat until it is just dust and the flies on it fly back to Mike Pence's head. Let's factor in the element of what I call today's gigantic, conservative, corporate-controlled, right-wing propaganda, fascist hate media, industrial complex. What if they didn't exist? What if all we had was an honest media? You know, the one Trump and his base call fake news or liberal media. No Fox Noise, no OANN, no Newsmax, no RSBN, Right Side Broadcasting, no Gateway Pundit, no Breitbart, no War Room with Steve Bannon, no InfoWars. Just an honest media. How much of that 7% shift to the right do you think may not have occurred? Maybe the result would have been the same. I don't know, but you can color me skeptical. I find it next to impossible to believe that if that element of the right-wing propaganda, fascist hate media were removed from the equation, that would have to have some effect. It would have had to on our 7-point shift. Would it erase all 7 points? Maybe, maybe not. 3, 4, 5, I don't know. Sadly, we will never know. But I think it's something to consider. Because if we had bucked the trend for nations who experienced the same shift in voting, then we would have been exceptional. Many people wonder how Kamala Harris could have received 15 million fewer votes than Joe Biden did in 2020. Answer: vote splitting, which I must confess is an anomaly I don't fully understand. And here's one area in which Democrats did exceptionally well. Democrats won all the Senate seats in battleground states except one. Jackie Rosen won here in Nevada. Trump won the state. Alyssa Slotkin won in Michigan. Trump won the state. Tammy Baldwin won in Wisconsin. Trump won the state. Ruben Gallego won in Arizona. Trump won the state. The one Senate race in the battleground state we did lose was Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, and Trump won there too. And get this, when Jackie Rosen gave her victory speech on Saturday, she outlined her priorities for her next term. 4 of her top priorities were increasing affordable housing, protecting reproductive rights, immigration reform, and reducing gun violence. She also promised to protect Social Security and Medicare and to strengthen the Affordable Care Act. Rosen said, quote, "I'll never back down to the fight against extreme Republicans in efforts to further roll back our rights," end quote. Well, damn, if only Kamala Harris had run on those issues. Oh, wait. As for vote splitting, what I don't understand is, why would you vote for a Democratic senator and then Donald Trump for president? It almost seems like, in a way, you're canceling your senatorial vote by doing so. And if you are part of the faction that was punishing Joe Biden and Democrats for the price of eggs, wouldn't you then, by extension, also punish the Democratic candidate? Again, it's an oddity I don't fully understand. And then there's the issue of turnout, which helps explain the fewer votes. Here in Nevada in 2020, voter turnout was 77%. As of Friday, turnout here in Nevada was 69.8%. We'll call it 70%, a difference of 7 points. Ironically, the same percentage as our shift in voters this election. 2 other things to keep in mind: nonpartisan turnout vote here in Nevada was higher this year and, in fact, outnumbered Democratic turnout. While Democrats made up 31.5% of this year's voters, non-major party voters made up 32.6% of those who turned out. Conversely, Republicans accounted for 36% of this year's voters. Republicans actually upped their ground game this year and increased their voter turnout here in the Silver State. How? By exposing what liars they are. Yeah, by discarding their past lies regarding early voting and voting by mail being fertile grounds for fraud, and instead encouraging their voters to vote by any method they chose, including voting by mail and or early voting. Again, proving their past feigned lies, concern, and pants-sweating over early voting and voting by mail were lies that we told you were lies. You're welcome. As well, the vaunted Reid machine, the Democratic political powerhouse created by the late Senator Harry Reid, it just ain't the same without Harry Reid and his more than sharp elbows. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you want to chat, that's 702-221-SAVE or SAVE. To the phones we had, and we'll start with Big Bad John. You're first. Thanks for calling. Big Bad John, are you there? I'm not hearing anything.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Go ahead, John.
I'm here, Kim. Well, Doug, you finally. I listened to a couple podcasts this weekend that were extremely, extremely troubling. One was the New York Times. They interviewed Nancy Pelosi. She's got to go. She needs to be retired. She is part of the problem. The biggest part of the problem is the media. The second biggest part of the problem is the weak Democratic leadership. I mean, the lasting image I have of Pelosi is Trump delivers a blistering State of the Union address. He shows up with a bazooka and some grenade launchers, and she brings a copy of the speech and rips it up. It's time for some fighters in the leadership position. Pelosi and Schumer must go. But the most important thing, and you mentioned it, you got it at the end there. You've been banging this drum for a long time. It's messaging. The Republicans just dominate the Democrats on messaging. Give me an example of a liberal broadcast network. There's just one. There's only one liberal outlet. It's MSNBC. The Doug Basham show should be syndicated nationally. It should be huge. The Republicans are buying up all the newspapers. You got the Adelson buying the Review Journal here in Las Vegas. The historically liberal newspapers, the New York Times and the Washington Post, went silent. They're cowards. There's no liberal messaging, and you've got a fire hose of hate and filth coming from Fox News and all the other radical right-wing media outlets, which you delineated earlier in your show here. So the Democrats, she raised $1 billion, and the Democrats just must understand that it's all about the messaging. And if you spend $100 million of that syndicating some liberal political talk radio shows like the Great Basham Radio Show, you'd be far better ahead than mobilizing people to knock on doors these days. And it's just look at Elon Musk buying Twitter. We're just getting dominated. The Democrats are just totally getting dominated by Republicans in the messaging aspect of the media.
I hear you, John. I'm going to squeeze Carl in before we get out of here, but I appreciate your call. Take care. Carl, thank you, John. Carl, you got the last word. It ain't much, but it's all yours.
Yeah, Doug. First, happy Veterans Day to the veterans. And aside from that, I can tell you exactly right now who Trump is going to put in his office positions. The Mark Pillow man is going to be head of the Department of Justice because he's such an honest man. He knows about justice. And Kennedy is going to be the head of the health department because he knows so much about medicine and health. So
God help us all.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, Bobby Brainworm shouldn't be put in charge of anything.
Yeah. Well, he's going to pick only the best. He says he always does. So, only the best. Anyway.
I hear you, Carl. Well, we will look forward to what awaits us. We have no other choice. Yeah, I appreciate you calling, Carl. Take care. Hey, folks, that's it. That's a wrap. We're done for the day. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you calling. And we will do this all over again tomorrow, hopefully with you. Until then, take care.
Doug Basham. Get ready. The Los Angeles Rams are back at their hungry